something from you.
Thank you very much. It is an honour being here from Auckland and to talk about something I'm very passionate about, which is high intensity. So just some disclosures there, and also just to let you guys know that I am a full clinician, not a researcher, and being a physio talk, there is a non-negotiable audience participation element. So to keep you all slightly on your toes for this talk. So why do we need to change our approach with MS? At the moment, we still have an inactivity rate of 80% for people living with MS. So that means they are not doing any form of real physical activity or exercise that meets any of the World Health Organization guidelines. So that starts to question the issues we have around secondary comorbidities and consequences, that if you're not moving, you're going to have some issues. However, the most shocking statistic that I feel we've got on this is that for the last 25 years, this statistic has not changed. And we really need to question ourselves of whatever we've been doing to date isn't working. Now, hopefully in a room full of very educated people, we all know that exercise is valuable, and hopefully all the clinicians in here recommend exercise to their cohort and to their patients, but we need to do more than just recommend. So why do we have this inactivity? We know there are the complications around fatigue and depression, but also there's a huge amount of fear. And this is a real concern of mine, is that individuals are still very scared and often have had a negative experience from exercise. And that's because when you exercise, you increase the core temperature, and that if you've got demyelination, that slows the nerve speed. So what happens is individuals with MS will normally experience sensory symptoms, including double vision, blurring vision, pins and needles, weakness, balance changes, and neuromuscular fatigue. So if you can imagine you've been diagnosed with a chronic neurological condition, you go and exercise and you feel some of those symptoms, that's going to put you off unless you've got some really good education or a way to exercise to minimize those symptoms. So they're living in this kind of fear of relapses, even though there is strong evidence to show that exercise does not increase relapse rate, but actually does the opposite and decrease relapse rate. We've also not necessarily got a great referral system to exercise specialists, because when surveyed and questioned, one of the highest unmet needs of individuals living with MS is accurate information about how to exercise. And this is always a shame when we look back at, I think there's about 4,000 plus papers on the benefit of exercise to MS, and this there was a great 2 papers released by White and Constantiniano back in 2008, and at that time what they were really highlighting is that we know exercise and activity has functional benefits, but they were proposing this neurological kind of benefit on brain health and also immunomodulation. Now that has carried on, that we've now got better research and supporting that when we work vigorously hard, we get an increase in BDNF, and that is what reduces axonal dieback in the central nervous system. And I think it's really important that we've obviously had some fantastic information about what's happening on the cell level and where the medication in MS is going. But what we really need to just take a step back and remember is that neuroplasticity and remyelination are activity dependent. If you've got a population who aren't moving, they are not driving their natural system to do this. So combining exercise and disease-modifying medications is an absolute must if we are going to move forwards together. This also starts to raise questions about secondary consequences compared to a primary impairment. If you're in a clinical setting and you meet someone with MS, how do you know that their presentation is purely from a primary impairment of the central nervous system compared to a secondary immobility consequence? It's the classic, if you don't use it, you lose it. So someone, appears to you and their walking ability has changed and you put that down, is that a worsening of their MS? Or is it just a fact that they've just got weaker because they've not walked so much? And we can't tell, we don't know how to separate those two things, but just to really get you to ask in those questions of what is the effect. We also have this overlooked window of opportunity that is another shocking statistic, that over those 4,000 plus papers about exercise and MS, there's still not a single paper published that looks at the effect of exercise on the newly diagnosed, so anything less than 2.5 years post-diagnosis. And we know at diagnosis there is already central nervous system changes. So this is again an area that we need to be moving into. So what we need is an exercise program that builds self-efficacy. If you are scared about exercise, you need to increase that confidence. But also, how can we improve physical activity adherence? So that brings us to the clinical program that I've been working on for the last 7 years called MS Get a Head Start. It's a 6-week high-intensity program that also have health behaviour education modules combined with it. Now, what it is a circuit-based program. They come in twice a week, for an hour, and they'll go through the exercises. So it's 9 exercises each time, which is a combination of strength, cardiovascular, and balance. Now, what we've done is through the high-intensity interval training. High-intensity interval training is essentially achieving better results, 10 to 40% more than moderate exercise. It's also in a shorter time period, which if you're not very compliant with exercise, anything that takes less time is a bonus. But also, one of our big issues is this exacerbation of sensory systems, and mostly neuromuscular fatigue and things like the blurring and the double vision. By doing high-intensity interval training, you allow individuals to have the opportunity to bring their baseline heart rate, etc. down, so they can exercise, get the benefits of exercise, but not have the same exacerbation in sensory systems. So the way we deliver our high-intensity interval training is week 1, they start with only 10 seconds. Now, pretty much anyone can do an exercise for 10 seconds. So essentially, at the end of week 1, people leave with confidence. They leave knowing that they can do something. Then over the weeks, we increase this up to 45 seconds. Now, if someone starts getting symptom production, we just keep them back at the week they were at, so they may stay at 20 seconds for the 6 weeks. Now, if anyone here has done high-intensity interval training, you'll know that 45 seconds can be a long time. So we do work individuals hard. The important element here is the ratio between exercise and rest is a 1-to-1. If you exercise for 10 seconds, you need to at least have a rest ratio of 10 seconds. And that's the same as you go up to 45 exercise, 45 rest. We developed 6 core principles based around how to exercise with MS, and this is what's delivered in the program. That for high-intensity training to be achieved, it has to be interval-based. The program allows specificity, which ultimately means you can individually tailor it. And we've used frequency and fun to help build long-term exercise adherence. And you need an element of challenge to drive neuroplastic change. We for far too long have been cotton woolen the population of MS rather than really challenging them in their balance. The 6 core principles are common ones. Hopefully all of you will be really aware that we need to address fatigue management, pain, exercise, and cognitive management. The other services is where we talk about the interdisciplinary teams. So we really educate about the role of the occupational therapists, clinical psychologists, nutritionists, orthotists, etc. And week 6 is all about the where to from here, building the self-management. Throughout this, they've got a workbook, they do reflections, and there's a lot of work with the health behaviour change element. So just presenting some raw, as I say, these are raw clinical results that we found in the over the time we've been delivering it. Now, this is a range of people from 3 months post-diagnosis right to 20 years post-diagnosis. The whole range of the phenotypes, we've done relapsing, remitting, primary and secondary progressive. And there's a slight change in the numbers of participants in the graphs, and that is because we've been playing around with outcome measures to see which ones give us the best results in the clinical setting. So with the fatigue severity scale here, we see obviously a decrease in the fatigue severity scale as a positive outcome. So these individuals after 6 weeks have less fatigue. The MS 12-point walking scale means that their perception of their walking has also improved. A really big thing for us was measuring self-efficacy, and this was a huge outcome that we had, that the self-efficacy and managing their MS improved significantly in the population, and that was also supported by the use of the life and satisfaction questionnaire. From the physical measures, what was really interesting is the 9-hole peg test, that we didn't train hand dexterity whatsoever in this program, and there is a significant improvement in hand dexterity at the end of 6 weeks to show that exercise has a systemic effect on the brain. The sit-to-stand test, is 5 sit-to-stands, and it measures leg power, and you can see that we've had some massive changes in the leg power here. And that's what we're all going to do now, because when I've been looking at some of the clinical measures, that 9-hole peg test people use regularly and the walking test, but if someone can't walk the 10-metre test, how else can you measure function? And for someone's quality of life, if they can stand and transfer compared to be a hoist transfer, that is massive. Okay, and you've also got to know what the normal amount is. So everyone's got to put their laptops down, everyone's got to stand up, arms across chests, okay? Someone who didn't increase their walking speed, their step count decreased, which means they were becoming more efficient with their gait. This program has been delivered in hydrotherapy, land, group, individually, and telehealth. And I have been most surprised by the amazing results we've had in the telehealth. So what it's saying is that combined approach of high-intensity interval training with a health behaviour component is what is needed to start trying to turn around this inactivity. Exercise alone won't do it, okay, so we need to come at it from a different approach. We're just in the process of trying to do a randomised control trial on this next year in Auckland, and just struggling with some funding, so anyone who's got funding ideas, please come see me at lunchtime. But our vision is to have a program like MS Get a Head Start that is publicly available and something that individuals will refer straight into when they are newly diagnosed. So thank you very much, and just remember combining that approach of high intensity and health behaviour change. Obviously there's lots more information on our website, and if anyone here is a health professional, as a physio or exercise specialist, or you work with them, there is over 10 hours of online content for any health professional to learn how to deliver this program on the website. Thank you very much.